In this lesson, we are going to cover the camera rollout. Now, this is a really important rollout to understand because this is going to allow us to save a lot of system resources, because there's no reason to waste any of your system resources by calculating items that are not seen in the final render. And that is how the camera rollout is going to help us. So, I've already set up the scene just to speed up the process. As you can see, it's really large, and I've already attached just a standard forest pack. Now, if this is our camera, and again, this works with any camera and any rendering engine, this is our view right over here, which means everything that we see over here is not needed in the final render, but it is going to render unless we tell Forest Pack not to. So what I want to do is go into the Forest Pack, and if you remember, we discussed under the General tab the stats. So I'm going to open up the stats and just show you the huge difference that this is going to do for us. So at the moment we have 458,964 items that are going to render. Underneath the camera rollout, the very first thing that I want you to do is enable it in the viewport. This really helps because it's going to allow us to see in the actual viewport what we are doing. So the first thing that you need to do is just click this button right over there, and immediately you can see a huge difference. So we are now looking at 136,624 items. Now that's really awesome. So basically what we're saying is to Forest Pack, I only want you to render what we see in the camera. Now the next thing that we need to do is have a look at the very first option. It says here, if empty, camera is selected automatically from render view. Now what I like to do is I like to click on the none button, and I'm going to actually select the camera. Now I know that whatever settings I do will be for this exact camera. The clear will obviously clear the camera if you want to swap them out, and then there's copy. This will allow you to assign the current camera to all forest objects. So if you've got a lot of Forest Pack Pro objects scattered on a surface, then what you can do is you can make sure that this camera is for all of the scatters, which obviously will help you quite a bit. So now that we've attached the camera, what's really great now is that if I move the camera in the viewport, it actually automatically updates, which again is really awesome. So now you can see exactly what you will and will not see in the actual render. So what we can do now is fiddle with a couple of the settings and allow us to see more or even see less, depending obviously on the actual scene. For now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this guy and just put him all the way back there. Let's go into our Forest Pack settings underneath camera. Limit to visibility. Now what we are saying is, if I go back into my camera quickly, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say show cone always, because I want to see the actual cone of the camera. Now when I refer to the cone, it's obviously that blue line. That is our field of view. That is what we will see in the actual render. Now you'll see that there's a little bit of a bleed right over there, allowing us to obviously see a bit more past the Forest Pack or past the camera's view, and that's really important. We need that because we don't want the actual Forest Pack just to end abruptly. That just won't look good. So the limit to visibility, if I untick that, it obviously switches it on and off. We want this on, especially if it's a large scene. Expand. Now we are saying that we would like an extra 15% from the actual end of the camera, which again is a really good number. If I push this at 0, you can see that number has fallen in. The problem is you might see a little bit of the terrain when you actually do your render. You can of course increase this as much as you want. Again, 15% is always a good value to go for. Experimentation will determine how much you need to go up. The far clipping plane works very similar to the actual camera clipping. What it's saying is that we want to limit the actual Forest Pack items to render from a distance. So I'm going to put this all the way at 0, and we'll start at about that value, and then I'm going to scroll up, and as you can see, we are clipping from a certain point, so we don't want to see past this numerical value from the actual camera. So this again really helps. If in the event that you will not be seeing anything there, you can obviously clip that away. The back offset will allow us to go in the reverse direction and sideways. This is always useful if you are going to see a little bit in the background of your camera. It does happen when there's some reflections, and if you don't see it, then obviously those reflections will not pick up what's behind the camera. So this is a really useful tool as well to use if you do need to see anything behind the camera just a little bit. Next we have copy parameters, and if I click on it, it says do you want to copy current parameters to all forest objects. So what that's saying is if you have multiple forest pack objects around and you want these exact settings to be copied into the forest pack itself, then you obviously can do that by clicking yes. It does all of it for you, so you don't have to come here and make sure you find the exact number of each one, which of course again will help you. Okay, so I'm going to click no there, zoom out. I've already set up another forest pack to speed up the process. It is a build forest pack, so this is obviously used mainly for trees. If I select on the forest pack, over here, look at, now what we can do is we can select none, select our camera, and now whenever we move this camera, the billboards will follow the camera, which of course is very useful if you've got multiple cameras facing a certain direction. You just need to make sure that the forest pack that is rendering in that view obviously selected to your camera. Let's select the forest pack again, go into the settings, clear will obviously clear it, on and off. The use current camera, of course, if you have one camera or it is the current camera in the rendering viewport, will be used. LODs, the level of detail. Now again, I've got a full lesson on the LODs which we will tackle when we understand level of detail, so we'll do that a little bit later. The distance, fall off, density and scale, again this works the same as the previous lesson when we discussed anything with regards to density and scale. Let's go into perspective mode over here and have a look. So I'm going to activate the density curve, and what we are going to do here is we can control the min and max ratio, which means is from the minimum to the maximum value we can control how dense the vegetation is, which obviously helps again because we're reducing the amount of system resources we need. So further away from the camera we'll obviously see a lot less, which means we don't need to render everything. So that controls that. The scale, same concept. We can have items appearing larger or smaller depending on where the camera is placed. So if you want items to be bigger in the foreground or the distance, then obviously we can control that. The edit curve will of course control it, so make sure you experiment with these. If you want them to be bigger closer to the camera or obviously smaller, then you'll use your curve editing. And then the enable on viewport, which we've already discussed, which I suggest you always switch on straight away. And that is it. So the camera is a very powerful parameter, definitely use it, and it will definitely help you when you're rendering very, very large scenes.